welcome to another episode of From the Horsebox.
When W.C. Fields said never work with children and animals, I think he forgot to include family. So perhaps we'd better come clean and admit both our connections to Peter Rosselli, our guest today. I'm Kate, his sister-in-law.
And I'm Claire, his daughter-in-law. This interview could be our trickiest interview so far. We've even discussed a podcast disclaimer form.
Yes, and I'm going to struggle with his name. He has always been Pedro or Ped since the trip on the Trans-Siberian Railway in 1977 when I became Kasia, so I hope our audience don't get too confused. To celebrate this family show, we are drinking picantes, quite my favourite cocktail, and they come highly recommended.
So welcome, Peter. Picantes in hand. Perhaps we could start by asking you how such an Italian-sounding name came to be in this beautiful corner of Wales.
Well, I've never had picantes, but I think they're quite delicious. As to my name, that came through, obviously, my father's family, who were bankers with Credit Lyonnais. Quite a few Rossellis worked in Paris for Credit Lyonnais, and it was my grandfather who came over to this country to open up the branch in London.
So what did your father do?
Well, he played a great deal, and he also was a wine merchant for some time after the war. But during the First World War, he joined up quite early, and he had quite a bad war in a way because he got affected by trench feet with all the mud. After that, he came out, and they thought that because all his circulation was pretty rotten, they thought he'd do better in East Africa. So he went over to East Africa and he worked in Tanganyika for a bit. And where he learnt Arabic and French, I don't know, but he was very good at linguist, and during the Second World War he went over to Beirut where he acted as liaison officer between the French and the English, and one of his talents was the fact that he could speak fluent French and also fluent Arabic.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Did you inherit this gift?
Absolutely not. I was totally useless because I reckon that my English is better than their Italian. But actually, I know 2 words in Italian, that's all.
Now, I learned very early on in the Rosselli family that dogs and dog walking are very important. And so we could start with you, where you go walking and what wildlife you like to see around you.
Well, I'm very lucky to have been attached to Brunner Peace for a long time now, since 1965. And one of the joys which I still have is walking around the pleasure gardens where Poisson is buried, which people will probably know about, the winner of the Grand National in 1919 and indeed 1918 when it was run at Gatwick, because it's separated from most forms of humans and things. Always the bird song is absolutely wonderful, and all the trees which were planted by the generation of Peels and indeed Tim now, and the changing colours throughout the year give me daily joy.
It is very beautiful. So let's go back to the beginning. You were the youngest of 3 siblings, you and Maggot, born Hitchin in Hertfordshire. When you were 5, your family moved to Warwickshire. Can you tell us about your early childhood there?
I had a very happy time in Warwickshire. Quite a good school, which served me very well for when I went on to Heatherdown and Eton. But there I learnt to ride. Well, actually, I would like to say I failed to learn to ride, taught by Bill Meeser's brother Harry, who, of course, Bill was the father of June Ockerston, but I'm afraid that I was never an advertisement for Harry's teaching. However, during the war, it was very interesting because there was no petrol, so nobody could go anywhere by car. So my brother and my sister either used to ride our ponies out to see people, go for miles, or we went in a pony trap drawn by Maggot's little hunter, or we went by bicycle.
So your family then moved to Suffolk, aged 11, where you took up golf, which has been a lifelong hobby.
Well, I was very relieved not to fall off a horse, which I managed to survive. I managed 19 years out of the saddle. Well, actually, even when I started riding, I was out of the saddle quite a lot, but 19 years without riding, because there was the hunting was not brilliant in Suffolk, and we were next to this marvellous golf course. I started to play golf.
Which course was that?
Well, it's called the Royal Whirlington and Newmarket Golf Course, better known as Milden Hall, and it is definitely the finest 9-hole course in the world. And I've been a member now for 77 years. Still am a member.
And you feel you're more talented with the golf ball than obviously the
I was
four-legged
much more talented with the golf ball than on the horse, but I have to say my mega excitement was when I took up the hunting.
Both you and your brother went to Eton. Do you have lots of happy memories from school there?
Yes, I think it was a lovely place to go to, mainly because of the people who were in my house, who were excellent, and indeed one made lifelong friends. It was a wonderful place, and they encouraged you to do anything which you wished to do. I mean, if you wanted to be a butterfly collector, they wouldn't think that was soppy. They would actually support it.
So would you say call yourself an all-rounder? You know, you seem to be good at most things. Would you call yourself a good all-rounder?
No, I'm not good at most things. I'm actually quite bad at most things, but I've learned to enjoy doing things badly to the best of my ability.
So you went on to do national service at Catterick. This must have been quite an ordeal, where you came up against Sergeant Smith, who tried to take charge of you.
Well, actually, being in the army was not an ordeal. I mean, I failed my officer selection board several times because I can never work out how you could get over a trench with the aid of a plank which wasn't long enough and a bit of rope. Having graduated from a potential officer to a trooper, or in fact staying a trooper, one was in barrack rooms with the toughest people, Glaswegians, Geordies, who I could find quite a lot of difficulty in actually translating what they were trying to say, but they couldn't have been better. Although they were quite tough, and there was a bit of headbutting went on amongst them if they weren't too pleased with somebody. Nevertheless, they were really good.
You enjoyed their company.
Well, Sergeant Smith used to try and take me off. He said, "Oh, Rosselli," he said, "you're different from us." So I said, No, Sergeant. You're different from us. So he said, a bit surprised when I said that. So he said, "Well, how am I different from you?" I said, "You're the only one who wishes to be in this army around this troop." So I'm afraid that slightly dented my potential advancement to Lance Corporal.
It sounds as though you were a genuine trooper Rosselli.
I
You see
was.
what I mean? Yeah.
You made a success of it.
And after national service, you began working for T&J Harrison Shipping Line, a career which lasted 43 years. Initially based in London, did you enjoy making most of your freedom after leaving the army?
Well, luckily my mother was born at Harrison, not particularly close to the major shareholders, but at least it gave me an entry into the firm, and they were extremely good to me in that they put up with me for 43 years when I worked full-time, and another 7 years when I worked non-executive. So it was actually a total of 50 years altogether. I spent the first year and a half in London either paying off crews or filling in sheets for what the ships needed to be provided, provisions for the ships. And then after that very detailed training, I was sent out to Calcutta to join the agency for Harrison's, running the trades for the ships which came out to us.
So you had quite a lot of responsibility at an early age. Did that come naturally to you to be able to?
Well, I think it made me grow up quite quickly, I have to say. But no, I had a good time, but I must admit Calcutta's not a place where one would wish to spend all one's life. It's amazing to see in the days before containerisation, all the goods which were loaded into ships were manhandled. So you had, for instance, one of the things which we carried was a mass of cement which were in paper bags, and you saw all these stevedores manhandling probably torn paper bags to put them into their stowage position. So, and nobody in those days knew about the dangers.
No health and safety.
Well, there wasn't too much of that.
Yes, and you said that the ships spent more time loading and unloading than they did at sea.
Well, that was the big thing, because as a break bulk ships, which one might call them, they probably spent 120 days at sea, and all the rest of the year they were either loading or discharging.
So one can only imagine the sort of mass of people working down at the ship, and it must have been an amazing sight. And
I mean, there was an awful lot of people.
work.
There were an awful lot of people in India.
What were the up times then? What kept you going? Was there a social life?
I've always reckoned that actually one should work hard and play hard, and certainly one had to work hard. I mean, there was never a day when one didn't have to go down to the docks to talk to their ship's officers, captains, and the stevedore superintendent as to loading and discharging. And indeed, one of the nastiest things which I had there was I was invited by a captain to have a curry luncheon, and little did I realise that the prawns, which tasted fine, had come from the dredger in the dock. And unfortunately, this caused a major upset, not to my stomach, funnily enough, but to my feet and my face. I got a thing called urticaria, where you swell up all over the place, and I couldn't walk for 2 or 3 days. But I declined any further invitations to that particular.
What an experience.
And you didn't take to elephant polo or any practice to keep your equine
no,
pursuits?
I certainly didn't. I kept at the golf course. I had some very good golf courses there.
So after 5 years, you returned to Liverpool, where you soon met Sarah and were married and had a church. Sharing her love of hunting, but not having ridden for many years, you were keen to give it a go. Can you tell us about those early, eventful hunting days, Ped?
Well, Sarah said to me, look, we don't see much of each other from Monday to Friday, and you won't see much of me on Saturday if you don't come hunting. So I said to her, look, all you people who say, I saw a stride, or I jumped this, or I jumped that, I'm so rubbish, I said. In fact, the horse, you sat on that horse's back, probably like a sack of coals, and it jumped the hedge or whatever. Of course I'll come hunting. So I was loaned one of old Lloyd Kennan's ponies, Piper. I was dressed up in the most extraordinary kit. I could have flown with the wings on my jade paws.
I think you did, didn't you?
Well, not the first time, but I had quite a lot of bets that I wouldn't fall off on the first occasion, which I didn't, so they must have had a black day, I suppose. On the second occasion, we whistled off immediately, a week later, and on Piper, and Piper and I seemed to get on all right, but he was only 14.5 pounds, so we gradually lost our place. We came further and further behind, but I was really enjoying myself. I even offered to give somebody a lead, which I thought was quite brilliant. And so he was exhausted after 2 hours, and I was similar. And it was a question of whether that he should carry me up Carden Bank or I should get off and carry him. But I went home, and Sarah and I were meant to be going out for dinner, and I lay in a hot bath with a lot of whiskey going down, and I climbed into my bed, and that's all I really remember, except Sarah occasionally shaking me, saying, it's time to get up, we've got to go to dinner. Eventually, she rang him up and said, I'm afraid Peter is in no fit condition to do anything. So the next day, one woke up feeling in agony, and that went on for the next 5 days. But the following Saturday, back again with Piper, and I hope Piper felt similarly restored, and that's how I started. And the next horse which I was loaned was Sally's rather good horse, because she was having Nicholas. So I was loaned this thing, and anyhow I thought, well, this is not going to last. So Bob Matson, who everybody will know, had these wonderful sales of hunters in Leicester. I went up to him and I said, Bob, how would you advise me to buy a suitable horse? And he looked at me and he said, in your case, this will be very difficult.
But you had lots of good horses subsequently, and it was at the start of a long hunting career till you were 70-something.
Well, I hunted till I was 70, and I think I hunted about 35 years. I had one stage a few horses. In fact, yes, there's another one which I was loaned by your father, Lloyd. It was an ex-point-to-pointer. Can you remember what?
Yeah, it was Abbott's cat.
Abbott's cat. Couldn't hold one side of him, but I had a wonderful few hunts on him. But then I bought a rather more suitable animal, and who lasted amazingly 5 years, because they didn't last very long with me.
Do you remember the trot-ups on a Sunday morning at Gredington? They were more nerve-wracking than the hunting, I think.
Well, they weren't good.
To see who was sound, jockey or horse?
Well, I never trotted up sound. That's for certain.
I think it was a similar case. But anyway, it gave you a lot of pleasure, and everybody else
And made you a lot of friends as well.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the great things about hunting. The hunting fraternity, it gave me another circle of friends. And that's circle, now I've stopped hunting. I don't see them so much, and I miss them.
Didn't you say that a Miss Peacock gave you some tuition?
Oh yes, this was before I first went, because I had this bet of all this champagne that I wouldn't fall off. So I went to Bob's daughter, Jilly.
Yes, yeah. They started a lot of people off hunting, that family.
Well, anyhow, after about 3 goes, she said, "I can teach you nothing." So I thought that was very good.
Yeah, you took that the wrong way.
Very clever of her. Well, I think when I first started hunting with the Winstay, that you went quite a speed when I saw. So in those days, a long time ago, there'd be a bit of coursing on the estate. And can you tell us how that came to be?
They've had, obviously, the Peels have been hooked on the coursing for generations, and indeed Sarah's great-grandfather had 2 dogs who won the Waterloo Cup. They had this private coursing meeting on the Dole, and
Mark Prescott,
yes. He reckoned it was the finest coursing course in the country, because they had really, really strong hares who knew their way around, which is quite important if they're going to survive. And I remember one day we had, all morning, there wasn't a single hare caught, not one.
It's just to see the skill of the dogs.
It is purely to see the skill of the dogs.
It's good that all the sports coexist successfully here. Yes. I seem to remember you were asked to do a talk by Captain Wallace about country sports all working together.
Well, yes, this happened because I think a lot of the landowners were asked by Ronnie Wallace, better known as God, to say how they were going to preserve country sports. This was held at Bangor Racecourse, and I suppose he thought he was obliged to ask me to have 5 minutes. I had warning of this, so I said, "Excuse me," and I left the room. And I dressed myself up. I had one leg in a hunting boot, and the other leg was in some waders, and I had a fishing rod, and I had a gun, and I staggered back into the room, rather to God's amazement. And I said, well, as I threw down the gun, I haven't actually shot since I was 12 years old, but I think it's something which one would do everything to preserve on the Brynnepeace estate. I've been hopeless at equestrian, but I'm passionate about riding after hounds, so I would like to preserve that. The fishing, similar. My casting is appalling, but one very much hopes that sport will go on. And as I did all these things, I removed all these clothes. Well, I think it deprived him. I was left with something.
Oh, well, that's good. I thought there was going to be a mass exodus there.
I think that's a great way of illustrating that all these things can work in harmony together.
Yes, especially when they're draped around Peter Rosselli. So continuing on the sporting theme, racing at Bangor-on-Dee obviously plays a huge part in your life. When
I got married to Sarah, Bangor-on-Dee is not like it was. There were no running rails for a start. The actual racecourse was between 2 farms, which were each paid £100 a year to allow the racing to continue. Because it was run in rather an amateurish way, without a proper course, all the sheep used to lie underneath the jumps. So very often, poor Philip Levyham had to go along to when the ground was quite unsuitable to plead that for forgiveness and that it would be all right and the next time. But that got altered, and it was suggested that there should be a 75-year lease, and that they should make the thing more permanent. And we said, well, fine, we'll do that, but the rent was on a chaotic formula, which to do with the price of grazing or something. So we said, if you're going to have a 75-year lease, then I'm afraid the thing has got to be put on a rather more formal footing. So we negotiated an agreement which has worked perfectly well to this day.
I seem to remember the maze in the middle at once.
Well, we had,
when you couldn't see what was going on the far side.
Well, you're quite right. There was a maze in the middle. Bobby McAlpine, who was chairman of Bangor Races at the time, couldn't understand why we couldn't tell the farmer who was a life tenant what he should grow and what he shouldn't grow. But then, fortunately, there came an opportunity for him to be bought out, which was done 50% by us and 50% by Bangor Racecourse. And since then, I mean, the inside of the race track has never been allowed to have crops of more than 3 foot high. So one doesn't get a completely blocked view.
Yes.
It's amazing to see how it has developed into a very much a favourite racecourse. And you have the hut there, don't you?
Well, let's give them their due, and Gina Chancellor as one of the teams. I mean, it's now thought probably the best small course for owners to be entertained on.
Yes.
Because they really look after them extremely well.
Closer to home, you have a lovely garden and are renowned to be good on a mower.
Well, sometimes, but like my cars, I've had the occasional accident, and I remember trying to turn the corner a bit too fast. Probably had one of these wonderful cocktails, and I ended up down the back with the mower. No, mowing gives one an opportunity to get away from the telephone and other people. You can't be interfered with.
You also tried to slice your toes off once, didn't you?
Yes, that was not good. I was using a fly mower with a gumboot.
And it hasn't stopped you mowing the churchyard either. Even this week you've been mowing.
Well, yes, it's one of the things which I've done. One always hopes that people will say, let me take over. But I'm glad to say Tim helps me most of the time now. Now I've done it now for 16 years or something.
Well, it's an important part of Overton community, the church. It keeps it in good order. Now, somewhere along the line, you learned to play bridge, and that links in with the church as well, because it's raised a lot of money, I know, for St Mary's Church. And what is the fascination with bridge? Is it the tactics?
Bridge is not necessarily... You don't have to be incredibly intelligent to play bridge well. You have to be crafty. And you have to take in, and certainly there's a lot of rules you are, but a lot of people who are very good at everything else they do are very bad at bridge because they don't notice people nodding or shaking their head or groaning. I took it up because my father was a really good bridge player, but he could never explain what one did to be good. He just did it naturally. And anyhow, so although I played every card game in the world with him, I never took to the bridge until I got jaundice, when I knew I was going to, because it was the second time I'd had it, I knew that I was going to be with my parents, who I'd limped to for 4 weeks. I got somebody to come along and teach me.
You're very good at communicating with people. Does bridge teach you things about other people?
It certainly teaches me whether they're a good bridge player or a bad bridge player. And it's a funny game because people do get very angry with their...
Does it show their true colours?
But out it comes. And,
Yes.
and one's got to believe, if one is better than them, that they're trying their best.
And also the bridge involves sort of entertaining, which you enjoy doing at home, and you've become quite a little chef.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that the beneficiaries from my entertaining are Marks and Spencer's, Cook, and various other places. But when I do provide cooking from my own thing, it is very limited, and anybody who comes is probably going to get the same meal every time they appear.
It's how you present it, isn't it? It's always presented beautifully. Is there anybody, historically or not, that you'd like to have to dinner in an imaginary dinner party?
Oh, I'd like to have you two.
Oh, yes, please. As long as you've been to the Crabman in Overton-on-Dee.
Now, you've been to many different places with Harrison Line, and good and bad, and lots of experiences, but you still, would you say that you enjoyed the countryside in North Wales the most?
Absolutely. I mean, I did a lot of travelling, and clearly when I was in charge of ordering of ships, it was all very interesting, but it was lovely to come back.
Back to Overton and North Wales. If there's one thing you could think of to make living in the countryside better for people, is there anything you could advise or tell us?
Well, I think that people who are lucky enough to live in the countryside should put something back. And if they live in a village, they should become involved in the local
community.
In the community. Or, for instance, involved in something which involves the farming community.
I agree entirely. We'd like to continue with some quick fire questions. Kate, would you like to start?
Right, which is the best golf course you've played on?
My favourite of all is Brancaster, which is this wonderful seaside golf course, which is, you've got the sea on one side and you've got this amazing sea marsh on the other. So even if one's not playing terribly well, you've got the birds to admire.
That sounds wonderful. Now, one word to describe your computer ability.
Pretty useless. That's 2 words, I'm sorry.
As I used to teach you, I'm a bit upset about that one, so let's try yellow chords or red chords.
Yellow ones show the ones when one drops the food too often, so I concentrate on the red ones.
What is your favourite season and why?
It was the winter for the hunting. Now I like the spring.
If you could buy any type of food right now, what would you buy?
I would like, if I was to go out to a restaurant, I would like a Dover sole Colbert.
Now, fancy dress outfits. You have been known to be an expert in these. Which was the best that you ever wore?
On my 40th birthday, we had a fancy dress party, and I shared a birthday with Jane McAlpine. So I asked her, I said, well, we always used to entertain each other's house on alternate years. And I said, well, what do you think we should have a thing? Oh, she said, there's no doubt about it. She said, we want as many presents as possible, so the theme will be birthday suits. And it produced a lot of very, very odd sights.
We can't hear about all of them. Could we just hear about one?
Well, I wore Sarah's tights, and I had a wig put in a position which made me, I thought, look quite decent, but probably not to other people.
What a party.
And finally, Anglesey or Antigua?
Definitely Anglesey, because that's where the family is. Not likely to be able to afford to take them to Antigua.
We're enormously looking forward to Anglesey in a few weeks. We always finish with a joke or a motto.
Well, I would just say, and the secret of why I enjoy life, and everybody has very bad times, nobody will actually go through without unhappiness of one sort or another, but I've basically been very happy for 95% of my life, and I think the motto is work hard, play hard, and kick on.
Well, I think we just have witnessed a masterclass in understatement.
Yes, I think after 50 years with Harrison Line, there was never going to be enough time for this interview. And I do remember him saying he had media training with John Humphreys. So we were very lucky when he said yes to answering questions from us.
When we first mentioned it, Ped asked me if it was like doing a eulogy. Well, I hope not. And after some editing, I hope we continue to be the beneficiaries of his cooking.
Thank you, Peter, for all your wonderful stories. And thank you also to our listeners. And if you could please press the follow button and maybe even give us a review, and you won't miss our next episode, when it could be you in the driving seat.